She wasn't speeding. She wasn't swerving. She wasn't doing anything wrong. But that didn't stop his lights from flashing behind her. At 11:17 p.m., on a near-empty road in Toledo, Ohio, a black woman in a government-issued SUV was pulled over by a white cop with something to prove. What he didn't know, what he never bothered to ask, was that she wasn't just some driver. She was a commander in the U.S. military, a Bronze Star recipient, and a senior logistics officer with federal clearance. But to him, she was a possible DUI. No ID could convince him. No calm voice could reach him. So he made her step out. Made her walk a straight line. Made her feel small. What he didn't realize was that she was recording. And 3 weeks later, that moment, one ticket, one door yanked open, one dismissive smirk would explode in a courtroom and end his career. Because power unchecked has a price. And she came to collect. This is the story of Naomi Ellison versus Officer Klein, a battle of truth, silence, and systemic bias. Watch to the end for the full twist. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if stories of justice like this matter to you. You want to know what happens when authority forgets its purpose and meets a woman who earned hers through discipline, sacrifice, and 22 years in uniform? It started on a quiet Wednesday night in early March. The kind of night where the streets whisper rather than speak, where shadows outnumber cars, and the cold air of Toledo, Ohio, cuts just a little deeper. It was 11:12 p.m. when Commander Naomi Ellison, black, composed, and driving alone, rolled through the intersection at Reynolds Road in her government-issued black Chevy Suburban. She wasn't in a rush. Wasn't weaving, wasn't speeding, and wasn't distracted. She had left a classified readiness briefing 2 hours south at Camp Jefferson. Now, with her collar undone and the moonlight glinting softly off her silver lapel pin, she was simply heading home. Her SUV was nothing special. No tinted plates. No screaming red flags. Just clean, sturdy government transport with subtle window tinting. The kind issued to senior officials in federal logistics. She hummed softly to the low roll of the tires beneath her, the kind of hum you do when you finally have a moment to exhale. But 3 blocks away, someone was waiting. Watching. Judging. Officer Travis Klein sat slouched in his patrol cruiser near a darkened gas station, lukewarm coffee steaming in his hand, scrolling through an endless feed of bad memes and worse headlines. His shift had been painfully slow. No action, no drama, no stories to bring back to the precinct locker room. Until her. An unfamiliar SUV gliding down the stretch, smooth and sure. Not reckless. Just not familiar. Klein's eyes narrowed. He didn't see the driver's face. Not yet. Just the silhouette. A lone figure. Female, maybe. And then he acted. Whether it was boredom or bias that pushed him, only he could say. But what followed had nothing to do with traffic safety. He tossed the coffee into the passenger footwell, flicked on his headlights, and pulled out. The red and blue lights lit up the empty road like a carnival in the dead of night. Inside the Suburban, Naomi's eyes glanced in the rearview mirror. She didn't panic. She didn't curse. She'd been stopped before. She was black in America. You learn to stay calm, stay still, stay silent. She slowed, clicked on her right signal, and pulled gently to the side of the road. Her hand stayed on the wheel. 10 and 2. Fingers still. Breathing steady. Her mind clicked into operational readiness, the same mindset she used in briefing rooms and war zones. She didn't know what Officer Klein wanted, but she knew exactly how to survive it. Behind her, the patrol car's door slammed with a thud too loud for the still night. Klein's figure emerged. Tall, broad, one hand resting near his holster, the other gripping a flashlight already turned on. He didn't hesitate. Didn't approach the passenger side like training suggested. He walked directly to her window. No greeting. No introduction. No smile. License and registration, he barked. Naomi kept her hands in full view and rolled her window down halfway. Her voice, cool and measured, floated into the night. "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" Klein's flashlight beam struck her face like an accusation. He didn't answer right away. His lips curled slightly. "You were drifting between lanes. Didn't signal. Looked like you might have been drinking." Naomi's brow furrowed. "I wasn't." Klein didn't like the tone. "License and registration," he repeated, louder this time. She didn't argue. Slowly, with practiced control, she reached for her glove compartment. Every movement deliberate. Every breath accounted for. She retrieved her government ID, military license, and vehicle registration all neatly tucked in a slim black folio. As she handed them through the small window gap, she added softly, "This is a federal vehicle. I'm a senior logistics commander for the Department of Defense." Klein barely glanced at the ID. "Military?" "Yes." He smirked. The kind of smirk that says so what without using words. "Doesn't mean you're above the law." "I never said I was." His tone sharpened. "Step out of the vehicle." Naomi blinked once. "Excuse me?" "I said step out of the car. We're doing a field sobriety test." Her jaw tightened. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the door open or pull rank. But she didn't move either. "Officer, I've complied. I'm not intoxicated. I'm asking why you believe this test is necessary." Klein stepped closer. "Now you're refusing a lawful order." "I'm asking for an explanation," Naomi replied. That was enough. Klein grabbed the handle and yanked her door open without another word. That's when Naomi, still seated, still poised, tapped her phone twice on the center console and hit record. "Just so we're clear," she said. "This conversation is being recorded." For the first time, Klein's gaze flicked to the phone. For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. But pride speaks louder than caution. "Out now." Naomi stepped out slowly. She didn't challenge him physically. Didn't protest. But her presence, tall, unshaken, radiating calm under pressure, shifted the energy. Even in civilian clothes, even without a single stripe showing, she moved like a woman who had earned her authority in deserts and disaster zones. Her spine didn't bend. Her stare didn't falter. Klein studied her for a beat too long. Something in the back of his mind murmured, "What am I dealing with here?" But the echo of that thought was drowned out by ego. He made her walk a straight line under flickering streetlights. Asked her to recite the alphabet backward. Checked her pupils, breath, stance. Everything. Naomi passed with precision. No stagger. No slurred speech. No hesitation. Still, Klein wrote the ticket. "Failure to stay in your lane," he muttered, tearing the slip from his pad and handing it over with mechanical indifference. Naomi took the paper without a word. She didn't argue. She didn't look away. But the look she gave him, measured, quiet, and piercing, stayed long after she closed her door. She drove off into the night. But that ticket? That single, shaky piece of paper? It would crack open everything. Because Klein didn't just pull over a black woman late at night. He pulled over a woman who outranked him in every way that mattered. A leader trained not only in logistics but in restraint. A woman who had spent 2 decades navigating war, politics, and patriarchy. Who had earned her rank not through family name or backroom favors but through excellence, deployment, and duty. And he treated her like she was invisible. Like she didn't belong behind that wheel. Like her skin and gender cancelled out everything else on her resume. But Naomi Ellison wasn't invisible. And she wasn't staying silent. Travis Klein tossed his patrol cruiser keys into the bowl at the front desk and walked into the station's locker room like any other night, half tired, half hyped, looking for someone to banter with before clocking out. He wasn't thinking about the stop. He wasn't thinking about Naomi Ellison. He was thinking about the next cup of bad coffee and the poker game scheduled for Friday night. In his mind, what happened on Reynolds Road was nothing, a routine stop, a minor ticket, some mouthy woman trying to pull rank with a badge and a polished voice. No big deal. That was always the story he told himself. And for 15 years, no one had challenged it. Klein had built a reputation inside the Toledo Police Department, a reputation of the kind that caused new officers to sit up straighter when he entered the room. He was the guy who got things done. He knew the paperwork codes by heart. Knew how to keep the body cam running just long enough. Knew when to nudge a call in his favor or when to look the other way. To his supervisors, he was reliable. To his peers, he was intimidating. To the people he pulled over, especially the ones who didn't look like him, he was something else entirely. Racked up another one, he muttered as he unbuttoned his jacket, slapping the citation pad onto the bench beside his locker. Officer Jason Mendez, a younger recruit just 2 years on the job, looked up from tying his boots. "You get a DUI?" "Not quite," Klein said. Woman was swerving, didn't signal. Seemed buzzed, but she played it clean. Field test came back nothing. Wrote her up anyway. Mendez chuckled awkwardly. "She give you trouble?" Klein rolled his eyes. Started tossing government ID at me like it meant something. Claimed she was military, some kind of. "I don't know, logistics coordinator." "Name?" Klein thought for a second. "Ellison. Naomi Ellison." Mendez froze. "You said Naomi Ellison?" "Yeah, why?" "She's Commander Ellison, man. My cousin's in the reserve. Says she's legit. Runs regional coordination from Fort Jefferson. Bronze Star, 2 deployments. She's not small time." Klein scoffed and slammed his locker. "I don't care if she runs the Pentagon. On that road, I'm the law." But the words didn't land the way they usually did. Because Mendez didn't laugh. Instead, he stood up slowly, brushing off his sleeves. "You might want to take a second look, Klein. You mess with someone like her, it won't stay in the locker room." Klein brushed him off, but as he walked toward the charging station to dock his body cam, a small seed of doubt rooted itself in his chest. It didn't bloom, not yet. But it was there. Quiet. Coiled. The footage uploaded as always, labeled, time-stamped, and logged. No one looked at it. Not right away. But someone would. Back at Fort Jefferson, Naomi Ellison didn't go home and rage. She didn't throw her keys on the kitchen counter or call a friend to vent. She went straight to her office. 2:47 a.m. The base was mostly asleep. A few guards on the perimeter. A cleaning crew in the north wing. But her lights were on. Commander Ellison sat at her desk, her coat draped over the back of her chair, hair let down, face lit only by the pale glow of the monitor. She had already offloaded the video from her phone and tagged it with a time code, incident, Reynolds Road, March 10, 25, 11:17 p.m. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger, though yes, she was angry. It was about something deeper. Something older. Something that had been gnawing at her ever since she had put on the uniform 22 years ago. It was about what it meant to be a black woman in a system built to question her existence, her rank, her authority, her legitimacy. Not once, but again and again and again. She had trained soldiers who saw combat before they saw college. Had flown supplies into conflict zones where roads no longer existed. Had coordinated cross-branch missions that saved lives. She'd earned respect through competence, not charisma. And still on a quiet road in her own country none of it mattered. To that officer, she had been just another, difficult, woman of color behind the wheel of a government SUV. No insignia, no ribbon, no federal clearance could protect her from a flashlight in the face and a voice that carried the weight of suspicion. She opened a new email draft addressed to Captain Wallace, her chain-of-command contact at Military Legal Affairs. Subject, Official Complaint Submission, Civil Rights Violation. She didn't type the body right away. Instead, she opened her drawer, pulled out a yellow legal pad, and wrote by hand. Approached without cause. No greeting, immediate accusation. Dismissed military ID. Pulled door open unprovoked. Ordered field sobriety test despite passing visual checks. Issued citation despite passing test. Implied disobedience equals guilt. Possible racial bias. She stared at the final line. Then underlined it twice. At 8:15 a.m., Sergeant Michelle Daniels knocked on her office door. "You good, ma'am?" Naomi looked up, still in the same clothes. "No. But I'm handling it." Daniels stepped inside and quietly closed the door behind her. She was sharp, loyal, and had worked under Naomi for the last 5 years. "I saw the video," she said. "Want me to contact base legal?" "Already done." Daniels hesitated. "You sure you want to push this? Public stuff gets messy." Naomi leaned back. "This isn't about public. It's about precedent. If it happened to me, what happens to someone without my rank? My clearance?" Daniels nodded once. That was all she needed to hear. By noon, the legal team had been looped in. By 3 p.m., they had reviewed the footage and agreed to file a formal complaint not just within military circles but with the city's Civilian Review Board and the Department of Justice's local field office. The complaint was airtight. Footage from both Naomi's phone and Klein's body cam was synced and transcribed. Timelines were created. Dialogue was broken down frame by frame. Still, Naomi kept things quiet. No press. No Twitter threads. No hashtags. Just precision. Just process. Back in the station, the locker room wasn't as friendly as usual. Klein noticed it first when Officer Darnell Price, someone he used to joke with daily, didn't even nod at him. Then came the hushed voices. The slight pause in conversations when he entered a room. The subtle tension. Something had shifted. And he knew it. He went to check the case file, but it had already been flagged with a red tab, under review, external oversight. He tapped the line on the screen twice. No access. His chest tightened. When he walked past the briefing room, Lieutenant Harper looked up from her desk and called him in. "Sit down." Klein folded his arms. "What's this about?" "The woman you stopped. Commander Ellison. She's acting like a victim." "She is a victim," Harper said flatly. "Do you even know who she is?" "I don't care who she is," Klein snapped. "I did my job." Harper leaned forward. "No. You flexed. You provoked. You humiliated someone who's done more for this country than you can understand." Klein didn't speak. "Her legal team has filed a federal complaint. You'll be served with a summons this week. And trust me, it's not going away." His mouth opened then shut. Because for the first time, even he felt it. This wasn't just another stop. This wasn't going to be another footnote in his report. He had poked the wrong hornet's nest. And now, the swarm was coming. The manila envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. It didn't come with flashing lights or angry voices, just a quiet delivery, dropped in the in tray of Officer Travis Klein's precinct mailbox. Thin. Unremarkable. The kind of envelope you might toss aside if you weren't paying attention. But his name was typed on the front, centered, sharp, official. Travis Klein. He opened it in the parking lot, standing beside his cruiser, still halfway through his first coffee. The cold wind bit at his neck, but he didn't notice. His eyes locked on the top line of the folded document. Plaintiff, Commander Naomi Ellison. Defendant, Officer Travis Klein. Cause, violation of civil rights, unlawful stop, abuse of authority, discrimination. At first, he laughed. Out loud. Right there next to the patrol cars. A short, bitter chuckle, the kind that masks panic with arrogance. No way this holds, he muttered. But when he walked back inside, something was different. The squad room was quieter than usual. A couple officers glanced his way, then looked down. One rookie fisher shifted nervously and stepped aside to let him pass, like he was radioactive. It was subtle. But unmistakable. For the first time in 15 years, Travis Klein was not the gravity in the room. He was the warning sign. Within an hour, Captain Olivia Hernandez called him into her office. The blinds were drawn. Her desk was cleared except for a single printed file. Close the door, she said. He did. Sit. He did that too. Captain Hernandez wasn't known for dramatics. She was the kind of leader who made eye contact that felt like a cross-examination and didn't raise her voice unless the building was on fire. Her tone, when she spoke, was ice cold. We need to talk about the Ellison stop. Klein leaned back. She's blowing it out of proportion. Got her feelings hurt because I didn't roll out a red carpet. Hernandez stared at him for 3 full seconds before replying. She's not just anybody, Klein. I don't care who she is. You should. Her voice was sharper now. She's a decorated military officer. Commander of Joint Logistics at Fort Jefferson. Bronze Star. 2 combat tours. She's addressed the Pentagon twice on disaster relief protocols. You stopped her like she was a DUI suspect, treated her like a threat, and wrote her a ticket after she passed a sobriety test. I followed procedure. You yanked her door open, ordered her out without just cause, and mocked her credentials. It wasn't mocking. It was. It was disrespect, and now it's a legal liability. Klein's jaw clenched. So we just fold because someone has rank? No, she said. But we don't ignore it when someone abuses power. That hit him. You. Not her. You. The footage from your body cam shows a lack of control. Aggressive posture. Threat escalation with no probable cause. So what? She's going to sue me personally. Hernandez nodded once. And the department. But the civil suit names you directly. Klein didn't answer. Because for the first time, he realized what it meant to be exposed. He had written hundreds of citations. Pulled over thousands of drivers. But none of them had power. Not like this. And more importantly, none of them had proof. Naomi Ellison had both. At Fort Jefferson, Naomi moved quietly. She didn't do interviews. She didn't post statements on social media. She didn't even tell her extended family about the case. Only her brother, a civil rights attorney in Cincinnati, who promised to monitor the filings. She didn't want attention. She wanted accountability. Her legal team, led by Delaney Price, a calm and razor-sharp woman who had litigated against 3 state police departments in the last 5 years, advised a strategic approach. We don't make this about headlines, Delaney said. We make it about documentation. Timelines. Tone. Body language. Pattern. Naomi nodded. No grandstanding. Just truth. Delaney paused, then added, You sure you want to wear your uniform in court? It'll make a statement. I know. And statements come with targets. Naomi smiled slightly. So does silence. They began preparing depositions. Reviewing the body cam footage on loop. Analyzing Klein's posture, his tone when he said, "Step out of the car," the hand that hovered near his weapon, the dismissive flick of his head when she mentioned her rank. Everything would matter. Because they weren't just building a case for Naomi. They were building a case for every person who had ever been stopped, questioned, humiliated, and then told they were overreacting. 3 weeks passed. And the court date loomed. Inside the department, Klein's world continued to shrink. Officer Mendez avoided him outright. Price no longer made jokes in the locker room. Even his supervisor, Sergeant Boucher, kept conversations short and formal. Worse still, Internal Affairs had opened a review file. He wasn't suspended yet, but he was radioactive. "Should I get a union lawyer?" he asked Hernandez. "That's your right," she said, not offering anything more. He met with a city-assigned defense attorney, Charles Breener, who had the unflappable charm of a man used to defending the indefensible. "Let me guess," Breener said at their first meeting. "You thought she was drunk, got tough, and now she's making you look bad." "Something like that." "Did she resist?" "No." "Did she yell?" "No." "Did she disobey?" Klein hesitated. "She questioned me." Breener leaned back in his chair. "That's not disobedience. That's called being a citizen." Klein swallowed hard. Breener sighed. "Well, Officer Klein, I hope you're ready for your every facial expression to be freeze-framed in high definition and dissected by a jury who probably knows someone who's been pulled over and treated like garbage. If you want to survive this, you'd better lose the ego and stick to facts." Klein didn't reply. Because the truth was beginning to surface. He hadn't seen Naomi Ellison as a threat. He had seen her as a nobody. That was the crime. The night before the court date, Naomi sat alone on the base balcony, looking out at the distant tree line. Her phone buzzed twice. It was Daniels. "Court prep done, ma'am. Do you need anything?" "No. Thank you." Another message came in from Delaney. "Media's been quiet. Good sign. But once the trial starts, we lose control of the narrative." Naomi stared at the screen. "That's okay. We have the truth." She stood, smoothing out the creases in her uniform slacks. She didn't feel fear. Not anymore. She felt clarity. For 2 decades, she had worn her rank like a second skin, earned, not gifted. She'd carried more weight than most men in her field. Fought twice as hard for half the praise. Navigated racism, sexism, silence. But this time, she wasn't navigating. She was leading. And tomorrow, the court would see it too. The courtroom wasn't packed with journalists or swarmed by cameras, not yet. But it was full. On one side of the gallery sat uniformed officers from Fort Jefferson, crisp, composed, and silent. On the other side, members of the Toledo Police Department stiff-backed, arms crossed, some pretending to look indifferent. Between them were civilians, a few curious observers, and 12 jurors whose expressions ranged from bored to nervous. But that all changed the moment the side door opened, and Commander Naomi Ellison walked in. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The gleam of her bronze star and the solid weight of her service ribbon said enough. Her full military uniform was pressed to perfection. Her posture was a sculpture of dignity. The room, without instruction, fell completely still. Travis Klein was already seated at the defense table, fidgeting with the edge of his too-tight collar. His smug confidence from weeks before had evaporated the moment she entered. And now, watching her approach the front of the room, he couldn't hide the way his shoulders curled in slightly, like someone bracing for a storm he knew he couldn't outrun. Judge Rebecca Leland adjusted her glasses and scanned the courtroom. "This is case 24-763C, Ellison vs. Klein. Allegations include unlawful detainment, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights. Plaintiff is represented by Ms. Delaney Price. Defense by Mr. Charles Breener." The gavel struck lightly, and just like that, it began. Delaney Price stood tall, precise in tone and posture, much like the woman she was representing. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't perform. She simply walked to the center of the courtroom and let the truth do the work. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is not a case of miscommunication. This is not a debate about policy. This is about power misused and a woman who, despite serving this country for over 2 decades, was treated like a threat because of what she looked like, not what she'd done. She paused, letting that hang in the air. Commander Naomi Ellison did everything right. But on March 10, she was stopped, questioned, ordered out of her car, and forced to perform a sobriety test, all without cause. And why? Because her identity was not believed. Because her credentials were not respected. Because bias doesn't check rank. Briner responded with polished smoothness, his voice dipped in reasonable doubt. What we have here is a routine traffic stop. An officer, doing his job, observed unusual driving behavior. He approached, he followed protocol as best he could, and he issued a citation. There was no arrest. No force. No injury. It is unfortunate the encounter upset the plaintiff, but not every uncomfortable moment is unlawful. Then it was Naomi's turn. She walked to the witness stand slowly, deliberately, like a soldier moving through a field where every step had consequences. She raised her right hand. She swore in. And she sat, eyes steady, spine straight, as Delaney began the questioning. Commander Ellison, tell us what happened the night of March 10. I was returning from a strategic logistics briefing at Camp Jefferson. It was just past 11 p.m. I was alone, in a government-issued SUV. I was not speeding. I was not impaired. I was pulled over near Reynolds Road. Did the officer identify himself? No. Did he explain why he stopped you? Not immediately. He walked to my window and demanded license and registration. I asked why I was stopped. He said I was drifting between lanes and that I looked like I might have been drinking. Were you drinking? No. Did you comply with his instructions? Yes. Completely. Did you inform him of your role? I gave him my military ID. I explained I was a federal logistics commander. And his response? He smirked. Said, that doesn't make you above the law. Then he told me to step out of the vehicle. Did you? I asked for clarification. He responded by opening my door and ordering me out again. That's when I began recording with my phone. Did you resist at any point? No. Did you complete the sobriety test? Yes. Did you pass? Yes. What happened after? He gave me a citation for failure to stay in my lane and left. Delaney turned to the jury. Did he ever apologize? Or explain his decision? No. Did you feel threatened? Yes. Why? Because he wasn't interested in hearing anything I had to say. Because his hand hovered near his weapon. Because I've seen what happens when people in my position say the wrong thing. I was careful. Because I had to be. Delaney looked at the judge. We request to play the video evidence. Judge Leland nodded. The lights dimmed. The screen came on. Naomi's phone recording played first. The angle was slightly off. She'd recorded it from the console, but the audio was crystal clear. They heard Klein's voice, hard and sharp, as he barked instructions without explanation. They saw Naomi's hand stay visible, her voice remain calm. They heard her ask, "Can I know why I'm being stopped?" and Klein reply, "Because I said so." Then came the body cam footage. The room watched Klein walk up to her window, flashlight already in her eyes. No introduction. No greeting. Just demand after demand. When Naomi handed over her ID, he barely looked at it. When she asked a question, he repeated his command louder. Then, they saw it the moment he opened her door without provocation. The moment he told her to walk a line under street lights she never should have been under. When the video ended, the room sat in complete silence. No whispers. No shifting. Just the still weight of realization. Delaney walked back toward the jury. This is not a matter of perception. You saw what happened. The plaintiff cooperated. She disclosed her identity. And yet, she was still treated like a suspect, not a citizen. Briner rose slowly. He walked toward Naomi, wearing a neutral smile that barely held together. Commander, officers are trained to act on instinct, especially late at night. Isn't it possible Officer Klein was being cautious? Caution does not mean disregard. But he didn't touch you. He didn't arrest you. He didn't have to, Naomi said. The damage was done when he decided who I was before hearing a word from me. Is it possible you interpreted his actions as more threatening because of past experiences? I interpreted his actions based on what I lived through in that moment. I don't need history to know when I'm being disrespected. You're a decorated officer. A leader. Doesn't that make you more resilient to discomfort? Naomi's eyes narrowed. My resilience doesn't cancel out his misconduct. Briner paused. And you believe he acted this way, why? Because I was a black woman alone at night in a government car. And he didn't think I belonged there. Briner stepped back. There was nothing more to say. Klein took the stand next. His suit didn't fit right. His voice cracked once during the oath. Delaney didn't have to push hard. Why did you stop her? She was drifting between lanes. Did you have video of that? No. Did you smell alcohol? No. Did she resist? No. So why did you escalate? She was questioning me. Is that illegal? No. Did you know she was a commander? No. If you had? Klein hesitated. I might have handled it differently. And there it was. Not quite regret. Not quite admission. But just enough truth to be undeniable. He hadn't seen a threat. He hadn't seen a federal official. He'd seen someone who, in his mind, didn't belong. And he reacted not with professionalism but with power. The jury didn't whisper. They didn't need to. Because when truth is undeniable, silence does the talking. 3 days passed before the jury returned. Not because the case was complicated, but because the court was determined to follow every inch of due process. They reviewed every second of the footage. Every transcript. Every word from the testimonies. But in the end, the decision was clear and it didn't come with shouting or applause. It came with silence. It was a cold Tuesday morning when everyone gathered again in the courtroom. No cameras. No reporters. Just the same tired wood benches, the same fluorescent lights, and two people on opposite ends of justice. Naomi Ellison sat calmly at the plaintiff's table, her uniform replaced by a dark blue suit and pearl earrings, formal, but not flashy. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat beside her, flipping through the same yellow legal pad she had carried since day one. Across the aisle, Travis Klein sat in the exact same spot he'd sat in all week, but today, his chair felt smaller. His shoulders were hunched. His tie was crooked. His lawyer, Briner, kept his hands clasped on the table, eyes focused forward, bracing for impact. The door opened. Judge Rebecca Leland entered, nodding once to the jury foreperson. Ladies and gentlemen, has the jury reached a unanimous verdict? The foreperson, a middle-aged black woman in a gray cardigan, stood with both hands gripping the sides of the wooden box. Yes, Your Honor. Please read the decision. In the case of Ellison versus Klein, we the jury find in favor of the plaintiff. No one gasped. No one cheered. But in that moment, the stillness inside the room shifted. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't move. Her expression was carved in granite, one of quiet vindication, not celebration. Judge Leland continued. The court finds that Officer Travis Klein violated the constitutional rights of Commander Naomi Ellison during an unlawful stop. His actions demonstrated a disregard for department protocol, federal recognition, and basic professional standards. While no criminal charges are being filed at this time, the court rules that the victim is owed $35,000 in civil compensation. Furthermore, this ruling will be submitted to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police Department for internal review and policy reform. Klein looked down. His lawyer leaned over and whispered, "We'll appeal." But even Breener's voice lacked conviction. The gavel fell again. Court adjourned. Outside, the sidewalk was quiet. A few local reporters had shown up, but there were no crowds, no flashes, no live feeds. Just a few scribbled notes in legal pads and a handful of murmurs between officers who weren't quite sure what to say. Klein walked out of the courthouse with his head down, shielding his face with a manila folder as one camera snapped a single photo. It wasn't the walk of shame. It was something quieter. Something heavier. The weight of being seen for who you really are when the badge can't protect you anymore. He didn't stop to give a statement. Didn't look back. Just got into his car and drove off, one hand gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. Naomi stayed inside for a few more minutes. She stood near the elevators, her back straight, waiting for her attorney to finish a final conversation with the clerk. When Delaney returned, she handed Naomi a folded slip of paper. "Confirmation of payment. And your win." Naomi glanced at it, then slipped it into her pocket. "You could have pushed for more," Delaney said softly. "The damages could have been higher. Press coverage, public campaign." "It wasn't about the money," Naomi replied. Delaney smiled faintly. "I know. Just making sure you remember that in 6 months when the media finally notices what we did here." Naomi turned to the glass exit doors, watching the snowflakes begin to fall on the street. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" "I think it already has." She nodded once, then walked outside into the chill, coat draped over her shoulders like armor. 1 week later, an internal memo leaked from the Toledo Police Department. It confirmed what many suspected: Officer Travis Klein had been placed on indefinite suspension pending departmental review. Some whispered that he would be quietly reassigned to desk duty. Others said he'd resign before that. No one said it to his face. But in the hallways and break rooms where respect was once measured in volume and bravado, now there was only one truth: Klein wasn't untouchable anymore. And he knew it. He came in late. Left early. Avoided eye contact. The badge still clung to his chest, but the authority it once held had thinned. At the precinct, people didn't whisper about the case anymore, they whispered about what it revealed. That power misused always leaves a mark, even if it hides behind a uniform. Meanwhile, back at Fort Jefferson, life continued as usual. Naomi didn't take time off. She didn't ask for accolades. She returned to her office the next morning, reviewed convoy deployment schedules, signed off on inventory manifests, and briefed 3 junior officers on crisis management in unstable zones. But something had changed. Not just in the way her subordinates looked at her but in what they saw. Because Naomi hadn't just worn her rank in the courtroom. She had worn it with purpose. She had stood in front of a system that told her to be quiet and refused. She had proven that justice wasn't just a concept, it was an expectation. And she had done it without raising her voice. 2 months later, Naomi stood before a room of fresh recruits at Fort Jefferson. They sat in pressed uniforms, eyes wide, pens poised to scribble notes. Some had joined the military because they believed in duty. Others, because they needed direction. But all of them were listening now. Naomi didn't lecture. She didn't pace or point. She simply stood at the front of the room and asked a single question. How many of you believe your uniform automatically earns you respect? A few hands went up. Naomi nodded. It's okay if you believe that. The world often tells you it's true. That the rank on your chest means people will listen. That the badge on your shoulder makes your words law. But let me tell you something, respect isn't given. It's earned. With every choice. Every command. Every moment when no one's watching. She paused. The same goes for power. It's not armor. It's responsibility. And if you can't carry it with integrity, then you don't deserve it. The room was silent. Some leaned forward. Others simply held their breath. I once had a man stop me on the side of the road, she continued. He didn't know who I was. Didn't care. He didn't see a commander. He saw someone who didn't fit his idea of who should be driving a government vehicle at night. And he acted accordingly. She scanned the room, her voice steady. I could have yelled. I could have frozen. I could have walked away and let it slide. But I didn't. I recorded it. I reported it. I took it to court. And I won. Another pause. That's not courage. That's responsibility. A single recruit in the back, barely 20, uniform still stiff from packaging, raised his hand. What happened to the officer? Naomi considered her words carefully. He's learning the weight of accountability. And so is the department he worked for. The recruit nodded, wide-eyed. Naomi stepped forward. You will all wear uniforms. Some of you will hold rank. A few of you may carry a badge. But remember this, it's not about what you wear. It's about what you do when that uniform is challenged. That's where character lives. That's where leadership begins. The class stayed silent. Not because they were bored. But because they understood. She closed her folder. Looked up. And ended with the words that had echoed in her mind since the moment that cruiser lit up her rear-view mirror. Power without responsibility is just fear in disguise. Speak up. Hold firm. And when you see injustice, don't look away. Because silence protects no one. But truth. Truth defends everyone. And with that, she stepped down. Not for applause. Not for recognition. But because the point had been made. And justice, quiet, powerful, undeniable, had finally been served. By the time the headlines caught up, the story was already over. Not in the sense of paperwork filed or interviews done, but in the way that all real stories end quietly, long after the courtroom clears and the cameras move on. A local article ran 3 weeks after the verdict: Decorated Commander wins Civil Rights Case Against Toledo Officer. It barely made the 4th page of the Sunday edition. The photograph used was blurry, taken from behind Naomi Ellison as she stepped onto the courthouse steps. No statement was included. No press conference followed. There was no viral video. No trending hashtag. And still it changed everything. Inside the Toledo Police Department, Officer Travis Klein's world continued to narrow. His locker, once a space of pride, had been moved to the far end of the hallway near records. He still showed up on time, still signed forms, but he no longer gave briefings, no longer joined the late-night squad room jokes. The rookies no longer mirrored his posture. They passed him in the hall with the stiff politeness reserved for people whose authority had an expiration date. The suspension hit 2 weeks later, indefinite, pending final review. The letter didn't spell out termination, but it might as well have. Officers didn't look him in the eye anymore. Some whispered he might transfer. Others said he'd leave the force entirely. But the badge that once meant control now felt like a fragile lie clinging to his chest. He wasn't feared anymore. He was a warning. Meanwhile, at Fort Jefferson, Naomi Ellison never mentioned the trial again. She returned to duty as if nothing had happened. She reviewed logistics, led convoy drills, signed deployment manifests, and updated disaster relief protocols. No one asked her about it. They didn't need to. Because something had shifted, not in how she acted, but in how others stood beside her. Her soldiers, her officers, her peers, they watched her differently now. Not as the commander who'd won a court case, but as someone who had walked through fire without ever raising her voice. Someone who had shown that restraint could be revolutionary. That dignity could be a weapon. And that kind of leadership leaves an imprint. It echoed one afternoon when Naomi was stopped in the hallway by Captain Alonzo, a quiet, steel-spined man who rarely said anything more than necessary. He didn't ask for a meeting. Didn't offer congratulations. He simply said, "That thing you did, it mattered." Then he turned and walked away. That was it. That was the full acknowledgement. And Naomi smiled, just a little, because that was all she ever needed. Months passed. Klein's file was officially marked with the phrase, "Final Warning." A note from internal review was added, subject to further oversight if reinstated. His reputation followed him like smoke through every precinct in the region. He tried to transfer. He tried to pivot. But the name, Naomi Ellison, came up in every review board, every background check. It didn't haunt him, it identified him. He wasn't just a cop who wrote a bad ticket. He was the reason a department had to rewrite part of its handbook on racial bias and stop protocols. And Naomi? She kept showing up. Every morning at 0600, boots tied sharp, eyes forward, commanding respect without ever demanding it. She spoke less in meetings, but when she did, the room listened. She mentored younger officers not just in tactics but in tone and how to speak without provoking, how to lead without belittling, how to correct injustice without setting the room on fire. She never told them what happened. But they knew. The story passed in whispers, not gossipy or sensational, but reverent. A commander who stood her ground, recorded the truth, and let the law work as it was meant to, rare, powerful, unforgettable. It all came full circle 6 months later, in the same auditorium where she had once sat through boring slideshows about chain of command and equipment requisition. This time, she stood on stage invited to speak at a regional ethics symposium. Most of the room were military officers, but a few civilian agencies had sent reps, including Toledo PD. Naomi didn't speak about the lawsuit. Not directly. She began with a simple line, "The uniform doesn't define you. It amplifies you." Then she talked about power not as control, but as accountability. She spoke about leadership not as volume, but as discipline. And she ended with a question, what do you do when your rank is ignored, your name dismissed, and your integrity questioned? She let it hang. You don't shout. You don't flinch. You stand. The applause didn't erupt. It rose slowly, like something earned. In the back row, a young officer from Toledo sat motionless, his notepad full, his face unreadable. But his eyes were locked on her. Because even now, even months later, Naomi wasn't teaching a lesson. She was living one. And that's how the system learns, not through spectacle, but through consequence. Not through noise, but through clarity. Naomi Ellison didn't need the world to know her name. She just needed the next officer to hesitate. The next civilian to speak up. The next courtroom to remember that silence is not the price of peace. What happened on that dark road wasn't unique. What Naomi did afterward was. She didn't fight with rage. She fought with truth. And in a system built to forget, she made sure this time it remembered. Some battles don't need fists. Or shouting. Or chaos. Sometimes, all it takes is one person standing their ground, holding on to their dignity, and saying, I won't stay silent anymore. Naomi Ellison didn't seek revenge. She didn't seek the spotlight. She sought accountability. With one recording, one courtroom, and one unshakable truth, she showed us that justice isn't loud, it's relentless. This wasn't just a traffic stop. It was a reflection of a system that still too often questions who belongs. And this time, it questioned the wrong woman. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of truth and quiet strength, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful true stories like this one. We tell them, you witness them together, we give voice to justice.